Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. I'm just checking that everybody can hear me okay. Great. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm actually in Hamilton. I have a pay equity meeting in a few hours, and I did not want to miss this opportunity to talk to Shakti as well. So I've come here and working off unfamiliar technology at the moment. But can I just do a shout out for a start off of all the work that you do? I've had a long association with Shakti, and I particularly want to do a big shout out to the tauranga team there. It's wonderful to see you, and I just appreciate so much the work that you do. And as you always know, I'm always there to support and do whatever I can to support you in your work, because it is just so important. And I love the invites, and I hope that we've got functions that are coming up with those celebrations that I can come to as well. It's just a wee hint there that don't leave me off your list. Look, I thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about pay equity, because it has taken a bit of a downward slide in the last couple of months that we never anticipated it would happen. Just going back in time a little bit, so that people understand the difference between equal pay and pay equity. Equal pay was where back in before 1972, men and women were paid for doing the same job at different rates. In fact, it was legislated that men would, before 1972, would get paid more than women for doing exactly the same job. So if you had two people who were in office careers, like my mum and my dad, when they started out working in the late 1940s, early 1950s, they were doing exactly the same job, but my dad got more money than what my mum got, simply because he was male. And it was deemed at the time that my dad was going to be the breadwinner for the family, and so he deserved to get more. And he also got a career pathway that my mum never got. And so my mum gave up work to have kids in the 1950s. She came back to work in the early 1970s. So she was out of the workforce for just under 20 years, and she came back to work. And when she did come back to work, they had changed the law so that men and women got exactly the same pay in those same jobs. But what didn't happen was that they didn't look at the value of the work that was being done by predominantly women. So the workforces such as teaching and nursing and many administrative work that was done by a lot of women was actually paid less than workforces where there were lots of men. So some of the examples that have been given out lately have been things like police officers, like fisheries officers, where many of the men fill those workforces. And so while Mum came back into the workforce in the 1970s, things had moved on a long way and more women were employed in the job that she did. So she was still earning a lot less than men that were employed in jobs of equal value. Now, that went on and on and on for quite some time. And I was employed in one of those professions for quite some time. I was a teacher and a school principal where there were more women involved in those jobs than what there were men, particularly in the teaching side of it. And we used to look at professions like police and say, well, are we valued as much in society as what they are? They get paid a lot more than what we do. Who gets valued? What has more value to it? And we always used to think, well, teaching's a pretty big valued job in society because we are working with the most important treasure, the most important taonga that people give to us, being their children. So that went on and on and on until a woman called Christine Bartlett, who worked in the aged care and very, very amazing woman, took up a case against the government to say, why is she not getting pay equity to jobs that are of equal value to those aged care workers? And I bet that we all know people who are in aged care or who are working in aged care who you know how important that job is. And so she won that court case. And the government at the time, who was a national government, John Key's government, started to work through with a task force how we could put it into legislation that jobs of equal value would get paid the same, whether they were being carried out by mainly men or mainly women. And that came in under our government in 2020. We put that through law. We came up with a way of working that through how you could look at jobs that were of equal value, even if they didn't look exactly the same. We looked at the value of those jobs and how we could look at a way of paying those jobs of equal value the same. And so women who were suddenly in jobs that had mostly women in them were putting in claims, their unions were putting in claims, and those were working through a very, very robust process and were getting paid a lot more. So some of the early successes that we saw were nurses got a pay equity claim, hospital-based nurses got a pay equity claim successful and saw their pay go up by a huge amount. A lot of people that work in supports in schools, so teacher aides and administrators that work in schools, they had a successful pay equity claim, and in some cases their pay went up by over 30%. And there was about 13 successful claims over that time between 2020 and now. Now, a few weeks ago, the government decided that they were going to change the pay equity legislation, and there were 33 existing claims that were just wiped overnight. Now, some of those claims were within weeks of signing a successful pay equity deal. So they had worked for years working out whether their job was undervalued and underpaid due to sex discrimination. They went through and the government cancelled all of those claims, no matter where they were in the process. And that was devastating. That was devastating to everyone. In fact, I don't think I've ever been so angry as I've been in Parliament as when I came and found out that though all of those claims had been cancelled and all pathways back to a successful new claim were diminished. So there was very, very little way of a pathway going forward. So that happened on a Tuesday morning. We found out at about 12 o'clock, and at 1 o'clock, about 300 people descended on Parliament to protest the government's cuts. Because not only were they doing this, they were putting it through under urgency, which means that no one from the public, no one from those 33 claims, no one that's had successful claims would have the right to come and tell them that this was a bad idea. So 300 people descended at very short notice, and there was a protest. The claims went through under urgency that day, which took away the voice of every New Zealander in this country to have their say, particularly the women of who this impacted on. And since then, we have been running alongside other groups, alongside unions, some campaigns to raise awareness about why pay equity is important. I want to go into that very briefly because some people say, oh, well, what difference does this make anyway? So the Minister of Finance, Nicola Willis, has said that she was shocked by the blowout that was being put around the figures for pay equity. And she needed that money to balance the rest of her budget because she wasn't very good at putting her budget together, and she had absolutely underthought, undervalued, or just not got it right about how much money she needed. So she needed to find that money from somewhere. And she talks about a figure that was in the pay equity of $12.8 billion. Now, we haven't seen the final details of that yet because the budget papers haven't been released. So we're not really certain what makes up that $12.8 billion. But this is my guess. And my guess is that when you go through the pay equity process, it's not easy. In fact, it takes a long time, and people from the different jobs come in and they work as a little bit of a research team to find out whether there is pay discrimination and undervaluation in pay. And when they get to the very last milestone, which could take years, could take 4 or 5 years, the government then says, yes, there has been sex discrimination, and that has led to this profession being undervalued and paid less. And so they put money aside so that they can then negotiate knowing the money is there. I believe that the money that Nicola Willis has taken to put in to prop up her budget is money that was put aside because people have acknowledged that women have been underpaid in those professions. So effectively, it's cutting future pay rises. It's taking the money that was due to women who have already proven that there is undervaluation and sex discrimination. So it's taking their money. And that's what I believe has happened in this particular case. But this is what I want to say. Nicola Willis was not saying she was shocked by the blowout. Effectively, what she was saying was that she was completely shocked by the inequity due to gender in this country, because that's what it is. She is completely shocked that women are undervalued, and women's jobs, where women are predominantly the main workforce in those particular jobs, are completely undervalued. And that's what shocked her. Now, when you rectify inequity, it's going to cost money. And that's why you put the money aside, so that it can't be used for anything else. So they had to change the law to use that money. But when you do put it back to those women, this is the good part. This is why it's so important. We all know on this particular Zoom call, we know that women are some of the main carers for their families. So as soon as they're going to get paid more, they're going to put that money back into the community because they're going to spend it for their families. That means that the government's getting the money anyway, because through GST and different tax takes as well. So the benefit goes around. But not only that, it means that families aren't having to stress around not being paid enough. It means they're getting enough money to live on. It means that that's good not just for those women, but good for their families as well, because it takes that stress away that women feel and have that feeling often when they're in those underpaid, undervalued professions. Why is this important to Shakti? Well, it's hugely important to you because many of those jobs that we're talking about are filled by people that are Māori, Pacific, and come from migrant communities. So care and support workers, for example. My mother-in-law sadly passed at the end of last year. In the last few weeks of her life, she had some amazing people who came in to help and support her. Not one of those people had been born in this country, but were New Zealanders who that was the job that they were doing, and doing amazingly well, because they loved my mother-in-law just like she was one of their whānau, their family. And those people were being undervalued through their pay. And that is something that we need to rectify. I couldn't do that job. I could not do the job that those people do. This is my own personal why. My sister is disabled. She lives in Christchurch, and she's been in a wheelchair for a long time. She's a lot older than me. She's about 11 or 12 years older than me. And she has been disabled and in a wheelchair, I'm going to say, for about 30 years now. And for a long time, she lived at home on her own. And she had these amazing people who came in to visit her, to look after her every single day, to make sure that she was okay, and to care for her and work around the needs that she had. They were the care and support workers. They gave her mana, they gave her independence to be able to live at home for a lot longer than what she would have been able to if they weren't there. Now, she lives in Christchurch, and after the Christchurch earthquake, she came to visit me for about 3 months, and I took over her cares for a short time. I know how hard those people work. I know that I can't do that work. I'm so grateful that there are people there who are there to look after our loved ones when they are at their most vulnerable. They are incredible, and I just take my hat off to them. Now, my sister now lives in a group home, and in that group home, there are care and support workers who look after her. And a few weeks ago, she rang me in tears and said that many of these women who worked in those, they were all women that work in those positions, there are three of them who had put their resignations in because the pay equity claim falling over was the last straw for them. They'd been hanging out thinking that they would be able to uh, get a pay equity claim and that that would help them in their family situation. But they know that they can actually move to Australia and get more money now. And so that's what they're doing. So she's lost three of her support carers just since the pay equity announcement was made. This is why it's important to me. If we're not supporting those people who support us and support our loved ones in their most vulnerable time, then we're not doing a good enough job as a society. We have to value those positions. We have to value those jobs. We have to value those people because they love our loved ones just as much as we do, which is why they do their job, and they are really, really good at it. So it is not good enough to take the money that was due to them and tell them that they have to wait until 2027 before they can put a new claim in. It is not good enough to do that when we know that they're really suffering because they are not being valued because of the job that they do is done by the majority of people are women. So it's not just for me, fighting this is not just about a political win. It's not just about doing the moral right thing, which it is the morally right thing to do, but it's about because these people deserve it. They are absolutely stunning, and I don't want to see people who are in positions such as looking after my sister as people who don't really want to be there because they're not the right people for the job. I want a profession that can attract the right people into it, that we value them, we pay them what they're worth, and that's why I'm going to keep fighting. I'll also say this. Recently, there's been lots of talk whether Labor would continue this, would continue pay equity and fighting for it. And the media's tried to say, well, where are you going to get the money from? I can tell you that after conversations in our caucus, we are absolutely fighting this. We are going to restore pay equity. We will find the money, and that comes direct from our finance spokesperson, Barb Edmonds, who said, we will find the money. We're just not going to play the game of saying it's coming from here or here or here just yet, because we haven't seen the budget papers and there's still one budget to go before we have another election. But we will reinstate pay equity. We will pay these people what they're worth, and we will be doing a lot of work. So look out for meetings in your area. Be in contact if you want any more information. Really, really happy to put you to the right people in your area, but really, really happy to come and talk in a bit more depth than we can here and have a few more questions and answer sessions around what we can do to ensure that pay equity is strong in our future and that we're not having this conversation in 50 years' time, that we are doing the right thing by women and paying them what they're worth. Kia ora.